Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope everybody's surviving the semester and the election. You're all doing a great job. So thank you again for being here. My name is Rosa Squillicote. I'm the Vice President of Part-Time Personnel. I've been an adjunct at CUNY for almost 9 years and a student at the Graduate Center for about 6 years. I'm also an alum of Hunter College, where I went as an undergrad. So having spent so much of my life at CUNY, I know how special and unique this place is. And after these months of being even more under attack than usual, as a working class person, as somebody who works at a public institution, and as an adjunct especially, I'm feeling scared and angry, and I'm feeling really ready to fight, and I hope you all feel the same. Again, thank you to everyone who is here this evening. It's really wonderful to see you. It's not an exaggeration to say that our only hope in this current political crisis is each other. It is only through collective action and solidarity that we can beat the threats of continued cuts, layoffs, increased class sizes, and other attacks on our working conditions. It is only through collective action and solidarity that we can beat the rising tide of fascism. By solidarity, I mean listening to and learning from each other and being willing to fight for each other. By collective action, I mean more than getting large turnout at any particular event. Collective action means making real the idea that the union is all of us. Tonight, this meeting will be a discussion among PSC members and elected officers presenting the union's analysis of the political moment and strategies for engaging in collective action to fight back. You will hear from panelists discussing our legislative agenda, campaigns to address adjunct layoffs and class size increases, the necessary anti-racism work being done on campuses, and our preparations for ensuring that CUNY only opens when it is safe to do so.
It's time.
Okay, so you should see a poll. Did people see a poll pop up? Let us know what have been your greatest challenges that you've experienced during the pandemic so far. It says multiple choice, but please click as many as apply. I know for myself, about like half of these issues have caused me a lot of stress and a lot of loss of sleep since March. So while you're filling out the poll, I just wanted to say that we'll be talking about not only issues and strategies, but ways that members can get involved. So whatever campaign or issue speaks to you, whatever we're working on that maybe addresses some of these issues that are in the poll, we need your participation and we need your commitment. And if you're already an active member, bring some colleagues or some friends to the next meeting or the next phone banking session or whatever it is that you're doing. We need all of us to win. So next, we're going to hear from George Emilio Sanchez, who is the chapter chair at the College of Staten Island and a member of the Executive Council. And he will speak and explain the web format of the meeting. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you very much. That was a beautiful intro. Thank you. And I want to welcome everybody on the webinar. There's over 1,000 people, so I want to welcome everybody to the first ever PSC mass Zoom meeting. It's the first time ever, so congratulate yourselves. I want to, in the name of the leadership and the Executive Council, I want to wish everyone safety and health. I hope everybody's okay, you, your loved ones, your friends. It's really important that you're here. So I just want to acknowledge that we are all here, that we're present, and that we have all experienced and gone through an incredible pandemic. But your presence tonight means everything to us. And if anything, we can all acknowledge that our work in this union becomes ever more important in the times we're living through. A few things, ground rules around the webinar, okay? Some of you, it might be the first time. So at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see Q&A. We hope you will abide by this rule that we really want the questions to go there and there only. The chat is there and it's open if you want to have discussions on the side, hopefully to a minimum, but it's there for you. But the questions, please only put in the Q&A. The icon is the bottom of your screen. So throughout the night, you'll hear reports and statements made. You can ask questions, but put them there. Also, like I said, the chat is open. There's also going to be polls like the one we just did with Rosa. So throughout the evening, there will be polls. We hope you participate. And also, there will be sample social media posts to give you an example. So you can do that as well, okay? It means everything to us that you're here. Your engagement and participation is so key to our union. And the fact that we have so many people is something that really, really resonates right now. So I welcome you again. It's wonderful to be here with you. And I now want to pass it off to our union president, Barbara Bowen. Home college is Queens College. Can we give it up for Barbara Bowen? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, George. Great job, George. And before we take the poll down, Rosa, you want to say a word if you're still unmuted, what you see in the poll results?
Yeah, I was actually just typing it into chat. So it looks like folks are saying that the adjustment to online teaching and remote work is the biggest issue. Also, the national political climate, not surprising. Financial uncertainty, increased class size or workload, concerns about being laid off, and workplace safety. Those are really the top issues that seem to be impacting us.
Great, well, thank you. So we'll try to talk about as many of them as we can tonight. And thank you so much, Rosa and George, great start. Thank you everyone who's on tonight. It's really fantastic to see you and for all the efforts you've made in different ways to be here tonight. Like George and Rosa, I start by wishing you well with your health and health of those you love. We just answered a snap poll about the challenges we faced, but no poll can capture the combination of grief, anxiety, rage many of us feel at an economic system that allowed this pandemic to flourish, become deadly, and devastate the poorest communities and communities of color. Nor can a poll capture what it has meant for many of us to absorb the news of racist killings and experience the power of demanding systemic change. My hope is that tonight's meeting will help to reduce that stress, not add to it, even though we'll be calling on you to work together. But as Rosa said, I think that will pull us together because the speakers are going to lay out a plan for the challenges we face. Tonight is about organizing. When we fight for full funding for CUNY, safe and fair working conditions for the support our students need, we are up against serious political and economic power. Sorry, just want to make sure it's ready. Okay. The challenges facing the union in this moment should not be minimized, and they're compounded by the failure of the CUNY administration to offer an alternative to that economic austerity vision. But the union's record of fighting back during the pandemic gives me confidence that together we have the imagination and strategic analysis and commitment to fight for each other that will allow us to prevail. The PSC began organizing against the challenges of the pandemic back in February, long before there was declaration in New York that we were an epicenter or that there was a prevalence of cases at all. Knowing how CUNY has failed historically to keep many of our buildings safe, even in the best of times, and the record of planned poverty and racist disinvestment in CUNY, the PSC activists foresaw that a public health emergency would hit CUNY hard. We were right, and we defined our campaign as an imperative to save lives, save jobs, and save CUNY. Why save CUNY? And I think a lot of you are living this right now, because the history of exploiting disasters, it's a history in this country and elsewhere, exploiting disasters to weaken and privatize public institutions, what has been called the shock doctrine, suggests that those in power will attempt to use the current economic crisis to remake the university as an even more stripped down, hollowed out institution. The post-pandemic CUNY, we feared, would be the university many budget cutters have always wanted: oversized online classes, less support for students, elimination of vulnerable academic programs, a more conservative curriculum, and more workers treated as disposable. The union fought back. We have a long record, and you'll hear some of it tonight, But members, chapter leaders, some of whom are speaking tonight, and officers pushed to get the faculty out of the classrooms and working remotely so they'd be safe, then pushed again to make sure the professional staff would be treated safely, then pushed again on and insisted that we describe the non-reappointment, as they call it, of adjuncts as what they are, layoffs, fought CUNY in court, on the streets, with thousands of other people, in the media, at campus actions, and still are fighting. We are still fighting on all of those fronts. But still, that was not enough. The union's strategic actions since the pandemic began did save some jobs, and I believe it helped to save lives. But we are still fighting for many adjunct jobs, as you'll hear tonight, and even one laid off is too many. The experience of the past months has taught leaders and activists that we will need to work in a new, strategic, union-wide way if we are to have a chance against the major forces opposing us. Our best hope, as we've heard earlier tonight, is each other. It's what we can count on. In a time when so much else is not under our control, the presidential election, climate change, the COVID epidemic itself, one thing we can control is how ready we are as a union and how we fight for each other. As always at CUNY, the struggle boils down to an effort to prevail against the political and economic power that keeps CUNY poor, because it does not want our students, our Black and brown and working class and poor students, to thrive. I see two primary threats for which we may need fast union-wide action, and that's what we're talking about tonight, how to get prepared for that. First, New York State could turn the current 20% withholding of funds into a permanent cut, or it could enact even bigger cuts. The city, also facing a huge budget hole that it has failed to address with energy, could also deliver a cut to community college funding. Most devastating, the CUNY trustees could declare fiscal exigency and invoke the policies of retrenchment. Fiscal exigency can be declared when the university cannot fulfill its mission. Once retrenchment is invoked, CUNY has to follow strict retrenchment guidelines, and there are protections under our contract too. But under retrenchment, CUNY can eventually fire faculty and staff. I'm not saying this to scare you, and I want to be crystal clear. I have not heard a single public or private discussion about imposing retrenchment. My own sense is that the city, state, and CUNY will do a lot to avoid it. But CUNY management has already shown under Chancellor Felix Matos Rodriguez that they are all too eager to see some of our colleagues as disposable, and we cannot count on them to resist any pressure from the state. The second threat I think a lot of us are thinking about is reopening. The CUNY administration has repeatedly violated its own inadequate reopening plans and has now taken the outrageous position that the union does not have the right to bring in an independent safety inspector if we believe a building may not be safe. If CUNY management decides that some segment of PSC members, whatever group that is, must return to campus, and we believe that our health and our lives may be at stake, we will need to be prepared to take action on a CUNY-wide scale. We're going to hear tonight how close we came to a strike in the one K-12 school we represent at Hunter College. We might have to face that on an even greater scale. So tonight, with those threats and others about the aggregation of all the other things we feel, tonight's about getting organized in two ways. First, to give power to sharp, immediate campaigns against increases in class size, unsafe buildings, revenue changes in Albany and City Hall. Second, to get prepared to take more militant, union-wide action to resist permanent, disastrous changes. We can't wait until those changes are upon us, and in many ways they're upon us already. We can't wait to start organizing. If members are called back to work in conditions that threaten their lives, or the state comes down with even more massive budget cuts, we can't start then to discuss with each other whether we are willing to take militant actions, including considering a strike. By that point, it will be too late to organize well. We have to start now, and the good news is that hundreds of PSC activists have already begun. Tonight, I'm asking you to be part of that. We have to be ready to fight, and that's all we can count on. The key to winning in any collective action, including a strike or even a strike authorization vote, is knowing that you can count on other people to be there with you. And that means systematically talking to each and every member so we know where they stand. Even though we are not planning a strike right now, we are planning and we have planning to be ready if we need to. Being ready means being honest with ourselves and each other about the power a strike authorization or a strike could give us, whether we have our allies and CUNY students with us, what the individual and shared risks are, and what it would take to win. Also, what we stand to gain. I hope we are not put in that position where every other tactic, litigating, media, demonstrating, bargaining, and more has not been enough to save lives, save jobs, and save CUNY. But if we are in that position and we are getting close to it, we need to be prepared on short notice to start using labor's unique power to withhold our work. Union activists have already conducted more than 3,000 individual organizing conversations, and the most important action you can take tonight is to sign up to join them. And you'll soon be seeing how you can do that. You'll see something in the chat. One thing we do know already is that we cannot count on the CUNY administration to stand up to pressure to demand an alternative to austerity. We have to count on ourselves together with our allies. If ever we needed proof of whether we could count on management to defend it, we have it now, to defend us, we have it now. Despite their blandishments and what some have called their romanticizing of doing more with less, CUNY management has accommodated silently and even preemptively to reduced funding. They made cuts before they were demanded by the state. Just this week, the Vice Chancellor of Finance from CUNY calmly mentioned that New York State was taking the position that no unionized New York State employees would receive their bargained and legally, contractually required raises when they're called for, but rather in January. We have had no communication from CUNY about our November 15th raise. We are entitled to it and we will fight for it. I've yet to hear anything, but the union is prepared to fight. A CUNY administration could take a public stand for the position that a university that serves the communities hardest hit by the pandemic and its economic aftermath should see increased investment, not cuts. 3 CUNY colleges were built or founded in the Great Depression in the 30s. Instead, Matos Rodriguez rushed to impose deep cuts on the senior colleges even before they were demanded, and then refused to use even a small share of the millions of dollars in federal CARES Act money to sustain adjunct jobs during a pandemic, despite the provision that the law has to keep university employees on payroll. This is not an administration that can be counted on to resist austerity or, unfortunately, to keep our workplaces safe. So the resistance has to come from us. We have to organize ourselves to protect our safety in the workplace, to fight off devastating budget cuts, to save our colleagues' jobs. If we organize ourselves, others will join us. Right now, after months of collective struggle in New York and the country, a struggle against racism, and facing a terrifying presidential election, people across the country are looking for possibilities for systemic change. Yes, we want a world without the pandemic, but I don't think we want a return to that pre-pandemic world. This is not about going back to normal. Normal was killing many of us. For millions of us and for future generations of humans, just returning to the past will be deadly. If we in the PSC can stand up in a way that we can count on ourselves to do, if we can start our organizing anew tonight and organize and be the resistance, because we know we cannot count on the boss, on the CUNY administration to keep us safe. If we have thousands of documented conversations that give us the confidence to rely on each other, maybe we can be part of that systemic change. It could start, and other big things have started at CUNY. Many, many other big, powerful movements have started with labor. There's a hunger right now for those movements and that change. We have the cause to do it, and I think it's worth everything we've got to try. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you sign up and to working with all of you every day and every month to come. Thank you. And now we turn it over to Andrea and Luke.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to lay out my best analysis of what is going on with the CUNY budget right now. But first, I just want to underscore that if nothing else, comes to the meeting, it will be up to have one-on-one conversations. We've got a couple thousand people on tonight, but we need to talk to every single one of our colleagues and be in an organized position to do whatever it is that we need to do in response to the range of crises facing us. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat one more time. And then I'll dive in. So there's understandably been a lot of confusion about what's happening with CUNY's budget and how those changes impact all of us. So I want to be clear. I want to clear up as much of that confusion as possible. I would say, given the fact that the political forces in this state are happy to have us confused and happy to have the budget opaque. So first, some context is in order. CUNY was consolidated as a system in 1961, and the funding structure that was put in place then is still the baseline from which we work. So broadly speaking, the state, that is the governor, the Senate, and the Assembly, are responsible for senior college funding and for a share of the community college funding. And the city, that is the mayor and the city council, are responsible for a share of the community college funding. Perhaps the most important piece of context for us to have is that even before the cuts that we're seeing right now, which are undoubtedly severe, there has been a rolling budget crisis at CUNY, a precipitous decline in the per student investment from the state and from the city in CUNY. So if you rewind even just to the 1990s, forget going back to the fiscal crisis of the 70s that we're all aware of, CUNY's budget would be $1 billion larger today if we were still supported at the same per student rate as the early 1990s. And then the last 10 years have been particularly difficult as we've had a governor who's enforced a policy across all state agencies, including the CUNY senior colleges, of not funding union contracts and of forcing the institutions, the agencies, in this case, the CUNY senior colleges, to fund those contracts out of their existing budgets. The mayor, thankfully, does not have such a policy, so the community colleges have been not impacted in the same way with regard to this. And then finally, a bit of context as well. In 2020, the CUNY budget was about $3.7 billion. 53% of that came from the state, 14% from the city, 8% from the federal government, and the rest from tuition, scholarships, and other kind of direct recoupment of money or theft of money, I would say, from students. So in any case, this is all context for the moment that we're in right now, which is turbulent in a way that is completely unbelievable. We are facing what I think of as cuts without cuts, and this is where the murkiness and the confusion comes to the fore. So in April, the legislature approved an operating budget for CUNY, and that budget is still on the books right now. There is a law that was passed on April 1st, and that budget is still on the books. So nothing has changed as a technical or a legal matter. However, when the governor passed that budget, when the legislature passed that budget, there were new powers granted. So whereas in the past, aid to localities, including CUNY funding, was protectability to withhold funding without cutting, without legislative oversight, this budget granted him that ability. And it was actually a power that he had long used with SUNY and other state institutions, and now he's doing it to us. So he can hold that money in the division of the budget until he sees fit. So he is currently holding back 20% of the state allocation that is on the books legally. Sorry, excuse me. So rather than challenging the withholding, the CUNY administration has imposed layoffs of adjunct faculty and staff, and restricted the hours of non-teaching adjuncts, adjunct CLTs, and others. So what will ultimately happen with this money is a political question. We know the effects of it currently for us, but what will happen with it is a political question. And I know that Andrea is going to speak to that forcefully in a moment. On the city side, the PSC and other forces have had some success in pushing against cuts. So for example, the mayor's initial budget proposed a substantial reduction in ASAP funding for the nationally acclaimed program at the community colleges, but the union and our allies successfully restored this funding in the approved budget. So what happens next at both the city and the state level is an open question, and it hinges in some substantial part, in my view, on what we do as union members, what we do as a union. The money that the governor is withholding could disappear into the void of this crisis, or it could actually materialize, this 20%, as the operating money that it was meant to be. Most alarming, this 20% that is currently being withheld could set the stage for a permanent cut of 20%. On the city side, the power rebuild in this 2021 electoral cycle, where 35 seats out of the 51 are term limited, will have substantial influence over what power
Luke.
in future budgets.
Luke, it's time.
Great, thanks a lot, Ida. I have more to say, but I'm thrilled to turn it over to Andrea, who is going to talk about the fights that we are in the middle of with respect to revenue. I would again underscore one-on-one conversations, becoming Vote Cope contributors, and plugging into this organization in as forceful a way as you can see fit. Thanks so much, Andrea.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea, First Vice President of the PSC. Great to be here and see, I think, nearly 2,000 people here. So now that you've heard facts about CUNY and the New York State budgets, I'd like to move on to how we and our allies have been working to pass legislation to create new revenue streams for education, healthcare, housing, and more. Then I'll talk about what hundreds of organizations and unions across the country are doing around the presidential election. And then we'll hear from Mike Fabricant, PSC legislative rep, on our campaign to fund CUNY. So I will not list the ways that working people, poor people, young people, people of color have been devastated by the pandemic recession. You know them and have witnessed and lived them. But despite the budget landscape Luke just described, this is not the time to say we're in the midst of a pandemic, so everyone must take a hit. 2 million New Yorkers have lost their jobs. We've already taken a hit. CUNY and our Black and brown communities have been taking a hit for decades. This is not the time to say the billionaires will leave our state if we tax them. That has been shown to be untrue. This is not the time to say we're in the midst of a major financial crisis, so we cannot borrow, spend, or invest. During the Great Depression, roads, bridges, CUNY colleges, and art was created with public funding. In a state in which there are approximately 120 billionaires who protect their wealth in a myriad of ways with the backing of our governor, this is the very moment to reform the tax structure that consistently and grossly benefits the ultra-wealthy. During the past 8 pandemic months, these individuals have increased their wealth by another $77 billion. The PSC has been involved with community-based organizations and other unions to press for legislation that would tax New York State's ultra-millionaires and billionaires instead of leaving us to endure further harmful cuts to our public institutions and agencies. We are supporting incumbents who have agreed to raising recurring revenue, and the PSC Legislative Committee is interviewing new progressive candidates who we believe will become strong champions for CUNY. There are currently 14 revenue-raising proposals in New York State that, if passed, would raise more than $50 billion per year. We need you to help us to interview and educate candidates who we will urge to prioritize CUNY in the state legislature. It's all virtual now, so please sign on and join this effort. So last week, I sent a message to all PSC members urging them to vote for Biden and Harris on the Working Families Party line. We respect your decision on whether to vote and on how to vote. But as a union, we have no illusions about the Democratic Party. After all, we have Cuomo, who has done significant harm to CUNY and our communities as a governor. But right now, we believe that we must do all we can to get Biden and Harris elected, and then we must do all we can after they're elected to force them to adopt the anti-austerity measures we need that will ultimately benefit CUNY and our students. It's significant that over 75 million have already cast their vote, but we still have 5 days in which to have an impact. Sign up to Phone Bank or go to Pennsylvania. Please see chats for the details. We have some links we can give you on that. And without talking about the Electoral College or historic disenfranchisement that targets Black and brown voters, we need to acknowledge that voter suppression and outside influence, among other things, have put this election in jeopardy. Community-based organizations, faith groups, youth groups, and unions, including ours, have taken on defending the election and ensuring a just outcome. The PSC is working with national coalitions called Protect the Results, Labor Action to Defend Democracy, and Fight Back Table. We're organizing nationally and locally, beginning with getting out the vote and then holding demonstrations in the days right after the election, unless there's a clear, decisive Biden victory by Wednesday. Broadly speaking, we go from getting all ballots counted to mapping possible threats to the election results to making sure Trump leaves office. If the victory is not decisive, there will of course be legal battles on both sides, but we're organizing against a possible campaign of civil disorder, some are calling civil war-like, or an attempted coup. Several unions and labor councils are talking about general strikes for democracy, and there is a nonpartisan effort to protect the votes and the stability of the transition. The first action will occur on November 4th, the day after the election, and will begin at the New York Public Library on 42nd Street and 5th Avenue at 4 p.m. Also, please hold Saturday, November 7th, if the election results are in danger and if the aftermath is still uncertain. Because these events will take place on a national scale and counter rallies are expected, some details will not be publicized until the day before the event. Despite the fact that we must remain masked and socially distant, if called upon, we expect tens of thousands of union members on the streets on Saturday, November 7th. Join if you can. The fact that we're talking tonight about a president who is promoting civil unrest to remain in power means it's time for all of us to be involved. You may already be working with an organization or a group that's active in pro-democracy, anti-racism, or legislative work, but whether you've been politically active for your entire life or have only recently taken to joining a movement for racial, environmental, or education justice, I urge you to do your political work.
Time.
Be PSC active. Thank you. Now I hand off to Mike Fabricant.
What I want to talk about is the New Deal for CUNY. And I want to begin with saying there's no magic bullet. What we have are many different paths, all of which we're expecting will accumulate into a kind of power that promotes leverage. We can talk about one-on-ones, and one-on-ones promote leverage by building relationships with our members and getting them ready to do the kind of work, militant and otherwise, necessary for us to build the power and leverage to fully fund this university. So I want to move now to turn the page to New Deal for CUNY. To move from austerity to transformational change requires not only a vision, but legislation which at the very least offers a very political, very ambitious agenda for a way forward. This is what we have worked to do to create through the New Deal for CUNY. I'll say also that the New Deal for CUNY is not simply the creation of the PSC, although that's not simple. It's been even more complicated because it's been the creation of a half a dozen, 7, 8 community organizations and student groups. We are working carefully and closely with them. Our job in the coming year will be to make it both visible and build the power to enact it. CUNY Rising started as a campaign and built many campaigns, the CUNY Rising Alliance. The New Deal for CUNY comes right out of CUNY Rising Alliance, and the PSC is a pivotal member in that alliance. Right now, NYSUT, our New York State United Teacher Federation, is working with us not only to craft the legislation, but to create and build prime sponsors. What is the New Deal for CUNY, you might ask? The New Deal for CUNY is a back to the future piece of legislation. And why do I say back to the future? We're demanding free tuition in that legislation. That's back to the early 1970s. We are demanding in that legislation 5,000 new full-time faculty members, which only brings us and does bring us back to the same number we had approximately in the early 70s of 12,000, 12,500 full-time faculty. Both are back to the future provisions. In addition, we are looking for the kind of advising that students need in order to graduate on time. Just meeting national standards means that, in fact, we're going to need hundreds of new advisors. Mental health counselors, particularly during this period, but even leading up to it, is a fourth provision. And the mental health counselors are, in fact, very important to providing the kind of assistance that students need presently, especially in the pandemic. As a part of the increased number of faculty, as one of the 5 items, we're also talking about parity for part-time faculty and an investment in that parity. And finally, a capital budget that reflects the needs of our students and ultimately honors our students for being here, not denigrate them for being here by sitting in buildings and overcrowded classrooms that often are collapsing and reinforce a sense of there being less than rather than more than. New Deal for CUNY is a partial corrective to historic racism that has in fact resulted in chronic underfunding to the City University of New York. And it's not only in the investment in Black and brown students, but also investing in the diversification of the academic labor force, which is a provision of the legislation. New Deal for CUNY represents a corrective to a historic loss of memory about what a quality public higher education means and what equitable access means. The New Deal for CUNY was created with CUNY Rising students, as noted earlier, and agency partners. It does not fill every need. It does not fill every need, but it takes us a long way, a very long way, to beginning to create a fuller funded CUNY. New Deal for CUNY, working closely with CUNY Rising Alliance, as a group that has moved and advanced it forward, is working with legislators presently and moving legislators right now, the new recently elected legislators, to be co-sponsors of that legislation. We are moving to have lots of legislators sign on to it. One might ask, why now? And I would respond, this is the best time for a piece of legislation like New Deal for CUNY. As is pointed out earlier, Brooklyn College was created in a moment in which there was depression and purportedly no money. And yet we built out the university at that time. There is no reason why we can't build the power and leverage the power to invest in CUNY at this time. And the multiple, New Deal for CUNY finally is an especially powerful way to channel our energy. It will take all of us, and it will take all of us in one-on-one conversations. It will take all of us to make it and enact it on the state. And I'll conclude finally with this last sentence. What we need to do is be there on December 2nd for at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8:30 for the town hall meeting CUNY Rising Alliance is sponsoring in order to support the advancement of that legislation.
Good evening, PSC. I am Nivedita Majumdar, PSC Secretary and John Jay faculty member. First, let me just say how wonderful it is to be part of this mass meeting. It's really good to be here together. The indefensible budget cuts have hit every aspect of our work conditions. In this panel, we'll address two core ways in which the cuts have impacted us and our students, and about our fight back: adjunct layoffs and increasing class size. Let's start with hearing from Frankie Lord, an adjunct faculty member from Medgar Evers, who was laid off earlier this year by an administration trying to cut costs at the expense of the livelihood of our colleagues in the midst of a pandemic. We salute the courage and resilience of our colleagues and recommit to the fight to restore every adjunct position. Frankie?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Frankie Lode. Thank you to everyone at PSC who has been working so hard over the years, and especially over the past few months, to advocate for adjuncts. After teaching art history at Medgar Evers College for 11 years, I was laid off during the spring semester. I'm one of a dozen of a long-time adjunct with 3-year appointments at Medgar Evers College who were laid off. I was notified right before final exam. Since being laid off, my wife and I have been dealing with loss of income and worry. I'm left without insurance in the midst of a global pandemic right as a second wave of the virus looms. All in all, I count my blessing because I have a supportive family. My friends and students, however, have faced illness, economic loss, and have lost loved ones. We have all been impacted by the pandemic and recession, but Black people, people like me, and most of my students are more likely to become ill, more likely to die, more likely to lose jobs. From time to time, I worry about my own well-being, but mostly I feel weird not being on campus. And I worry about Medgar Evers students. CUNY students are adult learners, first-generation Americans, workers returning to school for a better job. They struggle before COVID with family, work, academic, poverty, racism. Even prior to our current crisis, CUNY lacked the capacity to fully support students and offer them the support they need. Now, on top of that, our students suffer from having inadequate technology, lacking of computer or high-speed internet. At my campus, the graduation rates are extremely low. Laying off our most experienced adjunct isn't helping the students. Neither increasing class sizes when students need us most. I'd like to see the administration focus on the needs of students and faculty, especially adjuncts who have been the backbone of CUNY for so long. Right now, the decision being made will negatively impact the quality of education and will cause faculty burnout. Our students cannot succeed under these conditions. I'd like to see class sizes return to normal with additional accommodation for students who are struggling. And the 3-year contract should be restored for all adjuncts. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. We'll now hear from Bibi Baksh, who is from Bronx Community College. Bibi is one of the adjuncts whose job was restored after the threat of losing her job. It was restored, and thanks to the valiant fight that PSC put forth. Go ahead, Bibi.
Well, my speech is now bittersweet after hearing all that, because I went through these exact feelings in the summer, and I'm still going through them. So I have to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. I was laid off this spring after 22 years of service teaching English at Bronx Community College. It was a shock to my department when we were informed 19 of our senior adjuncts would not be reappointed. But the union did push really hard against the layoffs of the 3-year appointees. I witnessed that in my department, and people involved directly in the union belonging to my department. They held rallies and press events. We were all witness to that. A few of us were reappointed. I was eventually, luckily, but it took union pressure and luck. Most adjuncts have not been so lucky, and that's why my speech is really bittersweet. At a personal level, I was simply devastated. I just really felt secure that the layoffs would not affect adjuncts like myself with over 2 decades of service. Adjuncts who have learned to serve CUNY's diverse student population. And actually the job itself has simply become not just a means to our livelihood, but also a way of life. I simply see it as a bridge to providing for the community. Bottom line is, in addition to demonstrating our students do not deserve the best services and quality of education, CUNY is making the statement that our students do not deserve experienced instructors with years of excellent professional evaluation and student reviews. Effective employees are disposable at CUNY. And that in itself, as one of my respected colleagues summarized it to me, is the antithesis of what CUNY's mission stands for. The union fought for the 3-year contracts to give adjuncts some kind of stability in income and secured health benefits. And I did lose my health benefit at that time, and I lost several nights of sleep over that. And it simply seems wrong that we can be stopped. We can be stripped of that security. We are still not out of the woods. Already our hours, even the ones who have been rehired, our hours have been cut for next semester. And so the strength of all of us as a union is still much needed. I understand the push for more from the union. It took me 2 weeks into the semester to be actually rehired out of some luck. In addition to strong fighting by my department chair and union members. But I want to end by saying this experience had made me appreciate the union in a profound way. In solidarity is a phrase that really gave me hope. The calls from my colleagues and other union members kept me going. And while this might not be as comforting to those who still have not been reappointed, as my colleague Frankie, I have to say we have power when we work together. We can only remain hopeful that these kinds of actions are simply not allowed in the future. I want to emphasize, last thing, I do believe the support from colleagues also, who are also union members, and the strategic pressure from the union saves some adjuncts. So in solidarity, we continue to stand up for ourselves, our students, and each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. Thank you for that wonderful speech and for joining us, both Frankie and Bibi. This is invaluable. Let's turn to James Davis, chapter chair at Brooklyn College and EC member, for some analysis of the PSC position on adjunct layoffs. James?
Good evening, everybody. And thank you to Frankie and Bibi for being here. And thanks, it's really good to see everyone. As Nivedita said, I'm the chapter chair at Brooklyn College, where I've taught since 2003. I'm gonna offer a few words about the adjunct layoffs. And what I wanna emphasize here is that any strategy that we take going forward has to extend our commitment to refusing to normalize the cuts that we have seen and the impact they've had, especially on our contingent employees. So you know that the first place that CUNY management went when they learned about looming budget trouble ahead was to cut the fall course offerings. And in doing that, trim away the adjunct faculty and the non-teaching adjuncts. 2,800 people were laid off by June. Some of them relied on CUNY employment for their health insurance, as we've just been hearing. And it was a cruel but expedient way to handle the problem. It allowed them to shirk their responsibility to get the resources that they need to serve students well and to run our academic programs. Instead, CUNY pre-capitulated to budget cuts. They passed the problem on to the colleges, and then they tried to normalize the whole thing. This is inevitable given the recession. Other colleges and universities are doing even worse. At least we haven't fired any full-timers, right? How many of you heard the chancellor say that one and more? So again and again, we heard these rationalizations of a policy that was terminating people's health insurance in the middle of a pandemic and actively harming employees and the students we serve, even though there was nothing normal or inevitable about it. So that's why the union responded by organizing and litigating and filing grievances, because it was avoidable, and there's a real danger in allowing the university to normalize this practice. So first, the union took CUNY to court, as many of you know, because at the time our colleagues were being non-reappointed. CUNY had $132 million in federal CARES Act funding, institutional funds that were earmarked for, among other things, as Barbara mentioned, keeping people employed to the greatest extent practicable. Now, the judge didn't see it that way, but the arguments that the CUNY lawyers made in their defense are really breathtaking, and they should remove any illusions that we may harbor about who has our best interests at heart. Now, pressure also came from legislators. The union got 71 state and local officials, plus AOC, to write to the chancellor and the chair of the board of trustees, urging them to use the CARES Act funds to keep people employed and to maintain course offerings at healthy levels. 8 congressional leaders who represent New York districts and Washington also wrote. They basically asked Matos and Thompson, are you crazy? We fought with Mitch McConnell over this bill, and you used the part that was for students, but you won't disperse the institutional funds. You're doing layoffs instead. Now, most importantly, pressure came from, and still is coming from, rank and file union members like yourselves, many of you on this call, and the chapter leaders on the campuses, and through the citywide actions that the union held all summer and into the semester. For example, department chairs organized in large numbers to resist reductions they were told to make. And in many cases, they were able to limit the damage and get substantial cuts reversed. Chapter leaders across many campuses collaborated with activists on demonstrations and phone banks to place pressure on their local college administrations. And a lot of you know this because you were involved. So a lot of good coalitions have cropped up. On my own campus, and a remarkable coalition of adjuncts and full-time faculty, a lot of fierce, creative people resisting layoffs and returning people onto their healthcare. So overall, you know, how have we done? How have we fared? Well, a lot of people did get their classes back as a result of union organizing, and many people have their health insurance today thanks to the work of people in this room and beyond. But of course, we have not been able to beat back all the cuts, and we need to acknowledge that. Tremendous ingenuity and collective energy is being applied to this crisis. But if we don't manage to increase our leverage as a union, we may be caught flat-footed by subsequent cuts. We don't know when they will come or how deep they'll go, but we know where the university will turn first to lay off the least secure. So we need to be willing to say that's not okay. We won't normalize it. There are alternatives, and they involve the exercise of political will. So we need not just dozens, but thousands of union members to have real, deep conversations with colleagues, students, and community members about what it will take to develop the power we need. Thank you, Ida. What will move the Board of Trustees, the governor, and his budget director? What will prepare us to challenge the Taylor Law if we have to hold a job action or a strike? What will allow us to actually prevail and win if we're in that situation? So I hope everyone will sign on to be part of that strategy and recruit a friend too. I'm going to turn it back to Nivedita now, who's going to speak about the next critical front, which is class size.
Thank you so much for that, James. So we heard about the unconscionable loss of adjunct positions, along with the cuts in classes and sections. If these developments hurt students and faculty, we are also witnessing an increase in class size across departments and campuses. While large class sizes is a long-standing issue at our university, the current practice of systemic increase in class size is simply unsustainable. In the past 6 months, CUNY faculty have risen to the unprecedented challenge of mastering the skills necessary for online instruction at very short notice. We have received very little acknowledgement and, more importantly, the necessary support for making this transition. But what we cannot and will not accept is the added burden of increasing class sizes. If small classes are necessary for effective teaching in a conventional classroom, this is especially the case for online teaching, given the additional time required for assessment, counseling, and advisement. We constantly hear college administrations pronouncing their commitment to graduation rates and student success. If they are serious, they need to acknowledge what research has shown, that there is a direct connection between reduction in class size and enhanced academic achievement. Further, increasing class sizes may offer some immediate gains, but studies show that in the long run, the economic benefits of such reduction outweigh the costs. On a personal note, I want to share that because my daughter is applying for colleges this year, I've been going through a lot of glossy brochures where I noticed that one of the strongest methods by which colleges promote themselves is small class size. They are, of course, not wrong to do so, given the necessity of small classes for academic success. But here's the question. If small classes are a given for students at Vassar, at Oberlin, at Northwestern, do CUNY students deserve any less? Our students negotiate difficult work and family responsibilities to further their education and are currently among the most vulnerable populations impacted by the COVID crisis. They need and deserve more time and attention from us, not less, and that is almost impossible to provide with increasing class sizes. Let's be clear, the demand for small class sizes in CUNY is a demand for racial and economic justice. The PSC bargaining team has asked CUNY to bargain on the impact of increasing class size. Even though CUNY is legally obligated to bargain on this issue, they have refused to do so. This is unacceptable. This evening, we are launching our campaign against increasing class sizes in CUNY with a petition demanding that all classes should be aligned with class size standards established by the relevant disciplinary organizations. Second, we demand that CUNY immediately begin negotiations with the PSC on this matter. Further, we ask that CUNY must hire the additional faculty necessary to cover the instructional needs created by remote learning and prioritize rehiring laid-off adjunct faculty. Please, you can find the link to the petition in the chat, I hope. Sign the petition immediately. More important, please email the petition to your colleagues with a personal note. As full-time and part-time faculty, this campaign speaks to us directly. But I also want to ask for the support of our colleagues in the professional staff ranks. We firmly oppose the prospect of creeping increase in workload for our HEO and CLT colleagues. Increasing class size is simply another form of speed up of uncompensated workload. We are in it together and we fight it all. Most of all, anything that impacts CUNY students adversely impacts us all. So I ask every adjunct and full-time faculty member and every member of the professional staff to sign and circulate this petition. We will call on you in the next few days and weeks as we develop this campaign and fight for the CUNY we deserve. Thank you. Now, let's hear from Veronica Manlow, faculty member at Brooklyn College on the same issue of class size. Veronica?
Yes, I'll say a few remarks that reflect the experience at Brooklyn College and the School of Business at Brooklyn College. The optimal number for an online class is probably not more than 15. With 15 students, it's not hard to come up with a pedagogically sound strategy and to plan classes and assignments that are engaging for students and that are not exhausting and overwhelming for the professor. In an interview with Shomail Ahmed for the Clarion, I mentioned, referencing Pierre Bourdieu, that I consider the increasing class size a form of symbolic violence inflicted on our students and our faculty. Our students need more attention, not less. Faculty are working longer hours and students are contending with Wi-Fi issues, lack of private space to study and attend classes. Some have ill family members or are ill. Many work full-time, have children, some even have babies. Students complain of Zoom fatigue. I gave an example of a challenge I faced in trying to create breakout groups on Zoom in advance. It didn't work, and it's really frustrating. I spend a lot of time thinking of ways to work around the impersonality of a 40-person class, which I wouldn't have to do in a class of 15. And one of my colleagues is just writing to me to say, make sure to mention how our graduate classes in the School of Business are also 40 students. I teach in the business management department. 25% reductions were enforced across the board at Brooklyn College. Classes that were already full were canceled. We lost an adjunct who lost her health insurance, and students didn't get classes they needed. Our chair won't go over 40 students and says he refuses to increase class sizes this fall. Several female faculty in accounting are teaching large classes and are being shortchanged. You need to teach 110 students to earn 6 credits, but we have one untenured faculty member teaching 66 and earning 3.2 credits. If her classes were split into 2 sections, she would be earning 6 credits. Another faculty member is teaching 91, another female faculty 96, another 98 students, and they're getting 5.1 credits. Tenured male faculty, who tend to be more vocal, simply refuse to do this. It seems to be women, some of whom are untenured and are faculty of color, who bear the brunt of these unfair practices. This is likely to be happening all across CUNY. According to my chair, James Lynch, in an effort to save money, educational costs have been shifted to faculty, and then chairs are blamed for decisions they didn't make, such as the firing of adjuncts.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Finally, let's hear from David Hatchett. David is a member of PSC Executive Committee and an adjunct faculty member at Medgar Evers College. David?
Yeah. Hi, hello everyone. How are you doing? By the way, I'm not an adjunct. I'm a lecturer. But anyway,
I'm so sorry. Of course.
Quite all right. Anyway, I see this.
The adjunct issue is forefront in my head right now.
It's all right. All I had is scrambled at this point. But I think that for me, for me, the class size issue represents nothing less than a full-fledged CUNY assault on the faculty, staff, and students in the CUNY schools. Why do I say this? And no one can escape it. The full-timers are in situations where in the fall, they had, the full-timers are in situations where their class sizes have sometimes increased by 50%. Many part-timers might say, well, why is that important to me? Well, number one, if the full-timers class sizes increase, the number of classes available to part-timers decrease. There are fewer classes for them. Also, part-timers are oftentimes disproportionately locked into the freshman classes, which have borne the brunt of the class size increases. Even more than that, part-timers are particularly hit by this because many of them teach at 2, 3, 4 schools. Now they're faced with a situation in which maybe 1 or 2 of their schools, they're facing workload increases of more than 50%. This can't help but adversely affect an already tenuous situation. But even more than this, in my view, this is part of the old American tradition. You know, people think the American tradition is apple pie. No, it is not. the American political tradition is class exploitation and racism. Because there's anecdotal evidence that a disproportionate number of the people who've been fired and affected by the class sizes in various universities are faculty of color and students of color. The focal point of this, however, has been Medgar Evers College. As my colleague Frankie Laudy spoke about earlier, our class sizes, when we went to see the provost in July, he told us summarily that our class sizes would increase by 50%, would increase from 28 to 42. We screamed and hollered, and he said, I'll look into it. And then we came back and he says, I've decided to increase your class sizes from 42 to 52. Then later on, he dropped them back to 42, which was equally unacceptable to us. Since then, they've decided to drop them down to 40. So Medgar Evers, to some degree, is the epicenter of this CUNY-led class size assault. And I think this is something that hits everyone, full-timers, part-timers, minorities, non-minorities. We're all in this together on this issue. It's inescapable. If it is not unchecked and it's not allowed to be brought, it's not brought to heel, we'll destroy the CUNY as we know it. Even more than that, the racial dynamics of it cannot be ignored. Medgar Evers has been hit the hardest. The administration there has taken the hardest brunt. It's taken the hardest stance. And to a great degree, this could not have happened without the support and agreement of the chancellor and the highest levels of the City University of New York. On this issue, we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And thank you everyone on the panel. I think we're going to move to our Q&A panel now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Felicia Wharton, and I'm the chapter chair for Brooklyn Educational Opportunity Center. This is the Q&A section, and I will be asking questions to our leaders. So the first question, this is from Michael, and it's about full-time faculty and staff layoffs. Michael asks, I'm concerned about CUNY's budget. Most of the layoff discussions have been about NTAs. Is there any risk that full-time employees will face layoffs? Also, how will this affect reclassifications and merit increases? And the second question, Barbara, this is from Elise. Have PSC members ever gone on strike before? If so, when, under what circumstances, and were demands met as a result?
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll start a little bit and then I'll turn it over to some of my colleagues. Let me start on the second question. The first one was about layoffs. Well, I'll start with the first. The first was about layoffs of full-time workers, and maybe Andrea or Luke or someone would like to join in. I'll just go quickly. In some ways, I don't think we should make as strict a distinction between full-time and part-time, because we're all CUNY workers. And when CUNY is quite content to rely on adjuncts to do the majority of the teaching at CUNY, then they suddenly decide that adjuncts are disposable workers and can be just non-reappointed. And suddenly their contracts can end after maybe 20 years of teaching here. When we heard Frankie, we heard Bibi tonight. So those really are layoffs. And I think James mentioned this, that one of the important things the PSC did, which many other unions have not done, is that we named the termination of contracts, even short-term, or even the non-renewal of short-term contracts, as layoffs. We're not buying into the system that says that just because your contract ends at the end of the semester, then ending your time of work at CUNY is not a layoff. It is a layoff. So we feel we've experienced layoffs already, and we are still fighting them. We are still fighting in a grievance, and we're still fighting in court on the CARES Act and in other ways. But on full-time layoffs, as I think Mike said, the chancellor's always boasting that, oh, we haven't had any full-time layoffs. The main thing that could trigger full-time layoffs is a declaration of fiscal exigency, and then a policy, a practice of retrenchment, which is an elaborate procedural practice and devastating, one that some of us have resisted in the past successfully. And there are strict provisions. They're completely hierarchical, although they do allow interruption if a department is abolished, which is a way that some college presidents have gotten around the provisions about time limits for retrenchment of full-time faculty. So we do not see any discussion at this point of retrenchment of full-time faculty, but we all have to treat the layoffs of part-timers as a form of retrenchment of our whole unit. And that's partly why we're here tonight and why we want to build the power to really take a strike vote, to take a strike if we need to take other kinds of militant action. So maybe I'll just see if there's someone else on that, and then I'll turn to the second one. Let's see, Andrea or Luke, want to say anything about that?
That's good.
Sharon?
Yeah.
Just go on. Any other, Sharon or anyone else? It's hard to see, sorry, I'm, you know, in the crazy Zoom format, I'm really hating this format, but okay. So let me try the next one and then we'll see if others would like to join in. Oh, and someone else will affect classification and merit raises. We have to fight on every piece of that. CUNY management is going to use every piece they can to try to normalize abnormal cuts. That's what they're doing. They're saying, okay, well, maybe there will be fewer sabbaticals, maybe there'll be fewer of this or that, all in an attempt to say we can absorb this cut. The PSC's message is we cannot. And the only way not to sustain that cut is, one thing is a federal stimulus coming from Washington, but that's a one-time event and it's not enough. And in some ways, it's not even a stimulus. It's just a stopgap. It's not really a stimulus to the economy. What's really needed is a total change in the tax base in New York State, the kind of things that Andrea talked about, and we need more pressure on that. PSC has been really pressing. We've made some inroads on that, but we really need to change the whole budgetary basis. So let me say a word on the second one, and then maybe someone else will join in on the second question about have we ever done strike. PSC also, well, PSC has taken a few strike authorization votes. The most recent was about 3 or 4 weeks ago at the Hunter campus schools, the Hunter College campus schools, the one K through 12 school that we represent at CUNY. And we're one of our speakers later on tonight, Gilana Reese, is going to talk about that. They were faced with really potentially unsafe conditions, refusal by management to let us inspect those conditions. And we pushed really hard. They talked to every single member of the PSC in that school. They didn't just talk to their friends. They didn't just put out an announcement, hey, we think we should strike. They talked to every single person and made sure every single person was ready, not only to vote yes, but to go out if we had to go. They were ready to go. So that's the most recent. We took a strike authorization vote and got, I think, 92% in 2016 on our last contract, where we had not had a contract in 6 years. And that helped tremendously to push us to that contract. And in the early days of the PSC in the 70s, there was also a strike authorization vote. And then we've run a couple of strikes in the one private sector unit that we represent, the CUNY Research Foundation. So that's a little bit of the history. And let me say something about strategy. I think that the strike, you know, it is labor's unique weapon, and it is an incredibly powerful weapon. It could have huge impact and huge ramifications, not just here in CUNY, but citywide, statewide, and beyond, if we are ready to do it and do it well. And if that's what our members together democratically decide is the option we should take. There are risks to individuals, and because New York State has incredibly punitive anti-labor laws while presenting itself as the most pro-labor state in the country, there are severe penalties potentially on individuals and on the union, severe financial penalties. Right now, we are working to build protection so that we could weather those penalties. We wanted to be in a position to keep the PSC strong, even if we do engage in a strike. That's what we're working on now. And that's why James and others have talked about talking to members one by one by one. The strategy is to build the strength so that you know that you can count on the people with you to vote if it's the right moment to vote on strike authorization, and if they vote yes, to go out with you. So that's what we need to build, and that is our strategy, to fight hard on individual campaigns on particular issues where we have won things, like the issue of class size, like some of the other issues where we have fought and won, and at the same time to build the kind of structure a union needs to engage, especially in this state, in a strike, and to have a path through that strike to victory. That's what we need to do, and that's why starting with talking to everyone is the key part of that strategy. So I'll see if any others. Yeah, Luke.
Could I add to that, Barbara?
Please.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think an important bit of context for everyone in this meeting for the question of striking is what we were able to do, and then I think not able to do the last time that we had a strike authorization vote as a full bargaining unit. As Barbara said, Hunter College campus schools had a very successful strike vote among their 150 or so members, and we even have struck on the Research Foundation side for a day or two. But the last time that we undertook to take a strike authorization vote as a kind of under the master contract that the vast majority of us in this meeting are governed by, we got a 92% results, and over 10,000 of our people participated. So that was really, really powerful. Like, that was a powerful moment. And I will say, I and many others got engaged in that process, right? It brought the union alive to us. But we represent 1,000 people who work at the City University of New York. And so I think this is why I've been sharing in the chat and underscored when I was speaking, that I think if we get nothing else from this meeting tonight, it's to sign up, to engage on your campus, to talk to your colleagues, and to bring those additional 20,000 people who the last time we took a vote were not in our organization, did not participate, into organization with us, right? And so I think if we could get to a place where 30,000 of us could put on a PSC button on a single day, then we would be at a whole different level of organization. And so to me, that is, there are many things that I think we all should be doing for our union and with our union and together, but I think the core of those is to talk to our colleagues who are not yet engaged and bring them in. So thanks.
And I will say, you know, we are prepared to call for a strike authorization vote. We want to be able to win that vote if we do call for one, and then we want to be able to win a strike. And that's what a serious union does in terms of building. And that's why we're talking about talking to each other. Could we do one more quick one? And then we're going to hear from Penny, I think. Felicia, can we do one more quick one?
Yes, Barbara, we have one more. This question is from Joanne, and she asks, will the 3-year contract be instituted as in the past? I think this question is about the adjunct reappointment.
Yeah, someone want to answer that? I'm happy to, but okay, let me just try. Somebody wants to add in. The 3-year adjunct appointment structure still stands, despite the efforts to undo it that we heard about at Medgar Evers, and there's been some also at Bronx Community College and elsewhere. But that structure is still in our contract, and they're contractually required to hold to it. So it still stands. No one who was in a 3-year contract, and this is important to know, no one who was in the process, you know, in the middle of a 3-year contract was laid off. They protected adjuncts who were on the 3-year contract. That is a serious form of job security. We want more people on multi-year contracts and more people protected. But the real intervention that was most devastating and what we're grieving happened when colleges, even when the departments recommended adjuncts who were up for a renewal or a new 3-year appointment, recommended by their department, and then the college made the decision, oh, well, we're going to cut them. So yes, the appointment stands, we are fighting for it, and we're seeing in a way CUNY fighting against it, the kind of recidivism after the last contract. They are still fighting against it in some colleges, and Matos Rodriguez is not holding them to an agreement. He made a legal agreement to direct the colleges to prioritize 3-year appointments and people on health insurance, and he's got to be held accountable to that.
Time.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Penny Lewis. We will try to answer as many questions as possible tonight in this format, and we will answer questions in writing as well. Thank you. Penny?
Felicia, thanks. And hi, everybody. It's really great to be here.
I'm Penny Lewis. I'm the Vice President for Senior Colleges, and I want to speak more about the one-on-one member-to-member outreach that Barbara and Luke were just speaking about, and that we are really ramping up tonight. If you haven't signed up to participate by calling colleagues on your campus, I hope that you will now. I'm going to put the link in the chat again 3 times. Only a small number of us have signed up so far, and there are close to 2,000 of us here. So we need everyone here who wants to save jobs and save CUNY and save lives to be part of this critical assessment and outreach. We've heard that these conversations are about listening. We need to know how the budget crisis and the move to remote work has affected all of us. And we want to tell people about the union campaigns that we're hearing about tonight and invite them to join, because the more of us who are creatively engaging the crises that we face, the better our response is going to be. But perhaps most importantly, to go to what we were just hearing about, these conversations are about where we go from here. We know we might face calls to return to work in unsafe conditions, like our colleagues at the Hunter campus schools. We are already facing cuts, and regardless of the outcome of the national election, we're going to have a big fight ahead of us in order to secure the funding that we need. So bringing more members into the critical political and legislative work, including visiting legislators, increasing our donations to COPE, which is our political education funds, is central to the fight and to the conversations. And we need to be considering the possibility of job actions, including strikes, as Barbara and Luke just talked about, to resist the impossible threats to our safety and our jobs, to demonstrate our deep needs for more funding and public support. Our conversations, if we are all doing them, will help us to systematically assess the extent to which our membership is supportive of our campaigns and ready for the possibility of further militant action. We've already spoken to a few thousand of our colleagues, and if enough of us sign up, we can talk to all of our members by the start of next semester, but we want at least 10,000. Please sign up to help us with this critical work, because our strength is in numbers and solidarity, and these conversations will help us build both. So please sign up.
Great, thanks, Penny. And over to Cindy Bink.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I represent the Higher Education Officers, otherwise known as HEOs. That's H-E-O. And HEOs is a title at CUNY given to professional staff. We work everywhere from academic advisement, bursar, financial aid, registrar, accounting. We're even in the CUNY central office. And we've heard a lot tonight about the need to fight against adjunct layoffs and limit class size increases. This is such an important stance for us all, including HEOs. But I'm here to talk tonight about our union and how we're also fighting for HEOs, Higher Education Officers. So what has the union done for us? Well, the first thing is we are not back on campus. And there are some HEOs and many college lab technicians that are back, but the great majority of us are not there. That is because your union fought for you not to return unless it was safe, and we continue to fight. Many of us know that our campuses weren't actually safe before the pandemic. We had mold, rats, broken pipes, poor air quality. Now we fight to make sure that if we are called back, the college is following their own reopening plans. The union has pushed back, helped some workers to stay remote, reduced in-person hours for others, and demanded that that PPE be provided. CUNY management also thinks it's okay for us to use our own personal laptops, cell phones, and office supplies. I'm here to say, hold on to your receipts, because we are fighting to get you reimbursed for what you purchased. We want them to reimburse you because you kept the college running and served students from home during a pandemic. There is money for this, and we want to get it for you. So what else is the union doing? We're now in negotiations to protect our mental health by not allowing the college to keep us working around the clock. HEOs work 35 hours a week unless you are provided with pre-approved compensation. CUNY is depending on you to work for free. I know how seductive it is for many of us to put in hours without compensation, We want to help students and the college. We're dedicated employees. I understand this, but we are worth more. Don't work for free. CUNY will continue to ask and offer little in terms of monetary compensation. Force them to fight for us. Force them to show that they can't manage the college without more funding. If you work additional hours without pay, you're giving them an out. So what else has the union done? Management's asked you to work nonstop when the pandemic hit, and you did it. And they wanted to extend the deadline. We needed to extend the deadline for our annual vacation time. So not only were you working harder, they tried to limit the use of your vacation time, even though you didn't have anywhere to go because of the pandemic. Rest and take a break from work is needed. As a mental health expert, and I didn't tell you, I'm also the director of counseling at City Tech. So I know some things about mental health. As a mental health expert, I know how important it is to turn off your cell phone and shut down your computers after you've put in 35 hours a week. This is for your own mental health and those people also that are living with you. On every campus, there are elected PSC delegates that are HEO higher educational officers. They're chapter chairs, they're health and safety committees. Some have organized forums on workplace harassment and bullying. The PSC got the first public statement in the university's history against bullying and pledged together that every worker must be treated with dignity and respect. Our union needs you to make us even more powerful, fighting not only for our jobs, but for our students and CUNY. Public higher education is under attack. These are forces in this world there are forces here that would love to have an uneducated public. Work with us. Don't let that happen. Get involved and begin to lead with us. We are only strong with you. And now we have a poll. So we are going to ask you a question and see how your workload has changed. So I think the poll is going to be coming up in a couple of seconds. Here it is. Everybody should tell us how your workload has been affected by the pandemic. We want to get a sense of the group.
Thank you, Cindy. While we're waiting for that, I'll just say, first of all, thank you, Cindy, and great thank you for all the work you've done. And also, Cindy mentioned the higher education officers. The vast majority of the professional staff at CUNY are higher education officers. We'll be hearing later from one of the college laboratory technicians who have faced many of the same issues that Cindy talks about, and many of the same questions about the right to disconnect, the right to fend off overwork, apply exactly to those colleagues and also to other faculty. I mean, the workload issue crosses every title. So we'll see the results maybe in a second, but seems not to be, maybe people have so much workload they're putting on there. Okay,
here it is. Right. We got the results now. So it looks like that most of us had between 20 and 50% increase in work. That's outrageous. And that means that we are really going to have to fight that, because the university would love for us to continue to work at that pace. And so the more of us that come together and the more HEOs that join with the issues of adjunct faculty and full-time faculty, the better we'll have to fight this issue.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, so almost 60%, we're in that 20 to 50% increase. I'm just going to talk for a minute before introducing Anthony Brown, who's the chair of the new Association of Black Faculty and Staff at CUNY, and he's also a chair of Puerto Rican and Black Studies at Hunter College. And he represents one of the many groups that have sprung up in this moment of public exposure of racism and the systemic racism, violence, everyday violence that it wreaks on everyone in different ways. And that exists at CUNY. We heard about symbolic violence earlier. and all kinds of other deep ways that people have to fight against the horrible structural defining condition of American life, which is racism. And so it's an exciting thing that there are groups at Brooklyn College, there are groups at Queens, there's a CUNY-wide group working against racism. Also, our union has changed its constitution and added a standing committee on anti-racism, which is a big move. And I've already heard from a couple of other unions in different places that they saw our amendment and they're changing their constitutions to create such a committee. So things can grow, and that committee now has to be strong. And the international committee of our own union is also planning events. They have a subgroup working on racism globally and the US connection to that. They're holding a forum on December 6th called We Charge Genocide. To find out the history of that phrase, harrowing phrase, go to the forum, powerful phrase. And that's the context in which all of us are working right now and struggling. That's part of the context in which we would consider moving to a strike authorization. It's the context of daily life for many, many of our members. So I was really pleased that Anthony Brown was willing to speak for a couple of minutes and tell us about the association and its work and where you're going from here. So let's turn it over to Professor Brown. And he was teaching, so I hope he was able to get on. He was teaching till just quite recently. He's here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, welcome. Nice. Hi, thanks.
Right. Hi, good evening, colleagues. Barbara, thank you so much for this opportunity. I bring you greetings from the CUNY Association of Black Faculty and Staff, and we certainly stand in solidarity to resist austerity and retrenchment at CUNY. This organization has been around for about 2 years, and certainly given our current historical moment, we're needed even more than ever. The mission of the association is to support the academic and professional development of Black faculty, staff, students, and alumni across CUNY, and to serve as a resource for their recruitment, retention, advancement, and growth. Historically, Black or Africana studies departments have a mission and purpose that combine social justice with intellectual excellence. We in the association are invested in sustaining that legacy as we engage and serve the communities to which campuses and communities we are certainly connected to. The goal of the association is to share knowledge, create opportunities, and build thriving communities both within and beyond CUNY. A commitment to diverse communities is institutionalized and required both in the CUNY mission and in New York State education law. As we work with CUNY to honor its commitment to diversity, the association asserts that Black studies programs and departments play an integral role in serving the intellectual, academic, socio-cultural, and professional needs of all members of the CUNY community in substantially fulfilling the goals, vision, and mission of CUNY. The association members have testified before the City Council. We met very recently with the Chancellor and also the Vice Chancellor to address and begin to gain buy-in, if you will, on issues that are particularly germane to Black students, faculty, and staff at CUNY. The association looks forward to working with the union, particularly on this new anti-racism committee, particularly on those urgent issues that exist within and outside of CUNY. And again, we stand in solidarity against retrenchment, and particularly to uplift and raise issues of systemic racial inequality at CUNY and beyond. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thanks for joining. You came right off your class, so thank you. And I think, I'm not sure if Mike Fabricant got a chance to mention earlier before you were on, Anthony, about the new deal for CUNY. One of its provisions in terms of hiring, we're aiming, and we're just setting our own agenda for 5,000 new full-time faculty. And there's a special provision in there, number one, to use that opportunity to increase the racial and ethnic diversity in major ways, and 2 is to bring current adjuncts into full-time positions. So those are all things that are part of our agenda, and we have been gaining support for those in Albany, even in this moment of austerity, especially in this moment. So thank you. Thank you. So we'll turn it over to we'll talk about reopening, which is something on so many people's minds. Sharon Persinger. Sharon is muted.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to tell you about some of the ways the PSC has fought so that the people we represent can work safely. Early on, Cindy mentioned this, we had to fight to ensure that we were permitted to work remotely. More recently, we've had to fight to ensure that when our workplaces open, they reopen safely. And at every point, we have met resistance from CUNY. Back in the middle of February, the PSC emailed the CUNY Director of Environmental Health, pointing out the importance of hand washing in preventing the spread of coronavirus and reminding him that many CUNY bathrooms don't have warm water or soap or towels. His response was, if you can share any specific locations that require attention, I'll be happy to follow up. And that's illustrative that at the very beginning, CUNY did not take responsibility for providing the basic essentials for protecting its workers from catching this virus. And from the beginning, we saw that because of the degraded infrastructure at CUNY due to decades of underfunding, making our workplaces safe would require work from the union. In March, we fought to get CUNY to allow everyone to work remotely. You remember that the chancellor announced that classes would move to distance learning early in March for the remainder of the semester, but that college offices and libraries would remain open. So that meant that the non-classroom faculty and professional staff we represent would be treated differently. They would be working on campus and still have greater risk of exposure to COVID-19. CUNY allowed each college president to decide whether employees would be allowed to do their work remotely. We demanded that all professional staff and non-classroom faculty be able to work remotely in order to protect their health. We organized a letter writing campaign, over 4,000 letters in one afternoon, directed at the chancellor and the chairman of the board to support this demand. And we amplified this campaign on social media. So then the chancellor said, all right, only CUNY essential personnel should report to work. But he left to college presidents the discretion in deciding who was essential. And so still many PSC represented employees were being required to report on campus. We shifted to target college presidents. By the end of March, with continued pressure, the number of people in our bargaining unit who were working on campus was quite limited. So towards the end of the summer, CUNY began to go public on it developing of its plans for reopening under New York's phase 4. And the PSC pressured centrally and on the campuses for union representation on those reopening committees. Health and safety watchdogs collected the campus reopening plans. They analyzed them. From the watchdogs, we learned about the importance of proper ventilation in limiting the spread of COVID-19. We learned the important questions to ask about a ventilation system. The other two people later on the panel, Jean Grassman and Jeanette Batiste, will tell you how you can become a health and safety watchdog. But this health and safety preparation meant that when the Hunter College campus schools announced their plans to reopen, the members there knew how to evaluate those plans. They knew what indicated that the reopening wasn't safe. They prepared them to take action to defend the health of everyone who would be in those reopened buildings. Hunter Campus School speaker Gilana Reese will tell you about the actions they took. But I want to remind you of the common themes here. CUNY did not take central responsibility for protecting the health and safety of its workers. They allowed college presidents to make critical decisions about who would be essential until the PSC pressured them to make those decisions uniform. Individual campuses brought workers back to campus without adequate plans for their safety. until the PSC organized to stop that happening. CUNY took the position that the union didn't have the right to have an independent inspection of any buildings that were about to be reopened until we forced an inspection. So we've organized in our union chapters on the campuses, we've brought grievances, we've taken CUNY to court, we've applied public pressure on the chancellor, on the board, on the college presidents, by writing letters, by getting press, by using social media, and we will need to continue to do all of this to have safe reopening of our campuses, to influence the decision makers at the college level and the university level. And we'll need to do even more. I want to remind you back to the discussions that people have had about budget and the chronic underfunding of CUNY. Safe reopening, as we all know from the conditions of our work locations, safe reopening requires resources, it requires money. So the fight for CUNY funding is part of this fight for safe reopening, and I hope that you'll join in both of them. I think it's Gilana Reese who's be talking to you next. Gilana?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm here representing the Hunter College Campus School chapter of the PSC, which being the only K-12 school in the PSC has already returned to in-person instruction. In anticipation of school reopening in September, our faculty and union leadership asked throughout the summer to work together with our administrators on a reopening plan that ensured everyone's safety. Unfortunately, we were met with resistance from our administrators, from President Rabb of Hunter College, and from Chancellor Matos Rodriguez, who all refused to dialogue with us and to grant our reasonable health and safety demands that were standard practice at all other New York City public schools. We tried everything to accomplish our membership's most vital request, which was an independent safety inspection of our building, as all DOE schools were getting. Our building has been plagued with ventilation issues pre-COVID and has very few windows, earning it the nickname the Brick Prison. First, over 80% of our tenured faculty wrote detailed emails to management that yielded 0 responses. We then escalated to press conferences, rallies, no confidence votes, and we even had to file for a temporary restraining order in court, which we won, to force our administration to comply with their own reopening plan and purchase HEPA filters for our classrooms. All of these things generated a lot of press, including in the New York Times. However, all of this together with the mountain of pressure being applied through Barbara Bowen, our national union, and various political contexts was still not enough to get CUNY to grant us an independent safety inspection. It became clear that while none of our members wanted to strike, it was the only thing we had left to get CUNY to move when lives were at stake during this deadly global pandemic. Brian Graff and Deidre Brill of PSC provided us with invaluable training in taking individual assessments of our membership. By having individual conversations with all of our members, including multiple conversations with many members, we were able to assess where our members were at, understand their concerns, provide answers and an FAQ sheet. And ultimately, the individual conversations moved 85% of our membership to vote for a strike authorization to guarantee our safety. The 85% strike authorization got CUNY to agree to finally offer us an independent inspection of our buildings with industrial hygienists. However, we're still not out of the woods. A few weeks ago, transmission occurred within our school where 2 teachers and 2 students within our kindergarten tested positive. This incident caused our chapter to call for increased safety protocols, true cohorting, and more. After again being refused by our administration, we held another press conference and more press followed, and our administration is finally beginning to work with us in meeting some of our health and safety demands. Going through all of this has united and empowered our faculty more than ever. Our collective action and persistence has shown our administration that we are not going away, and we will continue to be a thorn in their side unless they work with us. We are all painfully aware that our continued solidarity is necessary, and we are grateful for the support of everyone at the PSC, including Barbara, Brian, Deirdre, Naomi, Andrea, Pete, Fran, and Jean, who you'll hear from next.
Jean Grassman?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, good evening. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the PSC Health and Safety Watchdogs. The Watchdogs are PSC members from all over CUNY and from all covered titles who have chosen to become health and safety activists. We have learned how to recognize dangerous working conditions, and we've become adept at fighting to make our workplaces safer. Our union contract, along with the federal OSHA Act and the state Public Employee Safety and Health Administration, require CUNY to provide a place of employment free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm. With the COVID pandemic, we, the watchdogs, along with the PSC leadership, are working harder than ever to hold CUNY administrators accountable. We know that it's not the experts and it's not the administrators who understand what's going on our campuses. It's us, the workers. Our members are aware of which elevators become overcrowded and which elevators lack, or which offices lack ventilation. And despite possessing this essential knowledge, we had to fight to even have a seat at the table during the development of the state required safety plans. The most important health and safety challenges lay ahead of us. While most PSC members are working remotely right now, we can't anticipate what will happen with the next wave of the virus or when CUNY will begin to call many of us back to in-person work. What we do know is CUNY's reopening plans were written before health experts fully understood that COVID-19 spreads via aerosolized particles. We know that 50 of CUNY's 300 buildings predate the Great Depression, and these buildings throughout CUNY have histories of inadequate ventilation, mold, and other health risks. We also know that by now, some CUNY colleges have already violated their own safety plans. Bronx Community College called HEOs back into a building where the ventilation wasn't working. The union got it fixed. York College called people back to an area without adequate social distancing, and the union got it fixed. Hunter College campus schools purchased bogus air purifiers, and the PSC went to court to get a ruling to force them to provide effective units, and we won. So there are currently about 200 watchdogs distributed throughout CUNY. So please join us in what is literally a life-saving effort. You can start by coming to our bi-weekly Thursday watchdog meetings. They're held from 3:30 to 4:30, just 1 hour, with the next one scheduled for November 5th. And they're also listed on the PSC calendar. And together we can hold CUNY to their legal and moral obligation to provide us with health and safe workplaces. Thank you.
Good evening, Good evening, union brothers and sisters. My name is Jeanette Batiste. I am the vice chair of the PSC COT chapter. I'm also a senior COT in Bronx Community College. So I'm here to speak on behalf of my fellow COT who are worried about COVID-19, have a right to be safe, healthy, and work in a workplace. We all have that right. COT has been in campus working because of their responsibility to take care of animals and equipment in different departments across campuses from the beginning. I work in a campus now 1 or twice a week, maintaining equipment and helping in a special program that we have. The numbers of COTs have returned to some degree of in-person work. It is important for you to know that when our union fights for strong COVID protocols and better PPE and ventilation at CUNY, we are fighting for workers on campus now, as well as for those who had yet to come back to work. There has been thousands of people that had died of COVID. I even have a cousin that has a damaged heart. Her bowels are damaged. She's only 32 years old because of COVID. And she's having extra side effects and so many others. She used to run marathons all the time. We know all that someone who has impacted one way or another, whether have been sick or a family member. And we even have COTs that have cancer and have to come into work because they don't want to lose their jobs. And the PSC is fighting for them as well, so they could stay home and work remotely because their immune system are compromised. CUNYs are all the buildings in CUNY are old. If you look at the history, they were built many years ago. And of course, many has a HVAC factor system before the pandemic or they had problems already, like Jean said, we had mold, sometimes bathroom sinks were not working, that we had no running water. So with this, the administrators who manage our facilities have lost credibility with many faculty and staff, and they're dealing with years of budget cuts and underfunding, but they're also doing a poor job. Full-time CLTs and part-time CLTs were not reappointed. CLTs were 35 hours a week. The nature of the CLT work hands-on require close contact with students and take sample students studying that have occupational therapy, medical lab technology, IT, nursing, and they work hand-to-hand with our students to prepare them. And my last is CLTs are essential to core mission and university, and we do absolutely critical student work. We stand in solidarity with our PSC colleague and will not stop organizing, fighting until the PSC demands our workplace safety are met for all titles, including our jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. And Jeanette's offered tremendous leadership to some of the PSC members who have been most on the front lines, tremendous leadership. So we're gonna go for another little space of questions and over to Michael Spear, right?
Yes, hi, so I'm Michael Spear. I'm at Kingsborough Community College where I teach history, and I'm on the PSC Executive Council. So we don't have a lot of time, but I'm gonna ask two questions. One, unfortunately I can't find it anymore, but someone asking a really excellent question about how can the PSC reach out to students more to inform them about what's going on in terms of the budget, and also sort of develop develop students as allies? So that's one question. The other one has to do with faculty governance, and this was asked by Paige Delano. We have a number of new presidents, and the Faculty Senate is concerned about increased inroads on faculty governance. How can we work with governance bodies and the UFS on these issues and give to push back on the sort of faculty deterioration of faculty governance?
Great, thanks. Maybe Andrea or Mike or Luke would like to start on the first one. Really important question, and it goes to the issue. The first question was, how can the PSC reach out to students to not only to provide information, I think, but to build support? And I'll just say that that's a serious task and a big task, and that's one of the reasons we are preparing carefully as we talk about strike preparation, rather than just announcing a strike authorization vote. We are being respectful of the students and their communities as we move toward being in a position to take that action. So Andrea?
Yeah, hi, thanks. That was a good question, whoever asked it. I'm glad you did. You know, we've been in CUNY Rising Alliance, which is made up of dozens of organizations. Many of them are our student organizations, the Student Senate, NIPERG, you know, and we're very involved with the new presidents who were just elected at each college. And according to Giovanni Piquant, who's the new student government president, she thinks they are a really strong and militant group. So she's really excited to work with them. In CUNY Rising Alliance, they are a very strong, they're leaders in the organization, and they had many actions last year. So we've certainly working collectively with them centrally in that way. And of course, around New Deal for CUNY, which Mike spoke about earlier. But you know, I know on campuses also, many of our chapters are involved with working with students through their chapters and on local issues on the campus. I think we in the union have always said that we will not win without student support. We will not win on our own as one union. We need, you know, mobilizing the whole city and the whole CUNY community. And we're also looking at finding and communicating with the millions probably of people who have associations with CUNY, whether it's alumni, retirees, and certainly current students, makes up just so many students. So we definitely have strong ties and want to continue that. And the students themselves really lead these efforts. They have, they run trainings for students to work, you know, to lead on campus, and we very much try to support them in every way we can. Mike or Luke, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add the following. I mean, as good a job, and I think CUNY Rising has done a good job in pulling students into events. We're going to need, if we move to one-on-one conversations and move to a strike authorization, we're going to need to do a heck of a lot better than what we've done. we're going to have to find ways to reach many of our students across the entire university. We have faculty positioned everywhere and HEOs positioned everywhere, but frankly, there are issues in faculty or HEOs beginning to talk to students about respecting a strike. But we're going to have a phone calling to students. We're going to have an outreach to students that is going to match our one-on-one work. And that's no small undertaking with approximately 500,000 students, both matriculated and non-matriculated. But as Andrea said, we don't win without students. And I would add, we not only don't win without students, we don't win without critical community agencies supporting us. When Chicago went out, when LA went out, when other groups went out, they had all of that in place, in addition to having done one-on-ones with all their members and organized them into various kinds of activities in relationship to a next stage after authorization. So all that work is in front of us.
Right. Thanks, Mike. And we look forward to it. The second question was on faculty governance. I don't know if Nivedita, you want to say something about that in terms of class size, because faculty governance has been really active on that issue, and we must work together on that. Nivedita, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. You know, class size is very central to faculty governance. And one thing I would encourage everyone is to find out whether at your own campus in the governance bodies, whether there are any bylaws which have regulated class size. Often these things get buried, and even if there are some good resolutions, etc., that were passed, they don't get used. So that would be the first step. But the second thing I think we should do, and we will be pushing it, that all senates should be passing individual resolutions. And we are also looking forward to working with the University Faculty Senate on this issue. So yes, absolutely, on this issue and every other possible issue, it is a great strategy to work as much as we can with governance bodies. Thank you for that question.
Right. Just before we go to a next one, we might have a chance for a couple more. I just wanted to say also, in terms of what Mike Fabricant said and others, our students are workers. In general, our students are workers, and they understand working conditions. And it's a powerful bond that we have. It's not automatic, but they are workers. And I think that gives us an added basis for our connection, which we don't always see with college students. So I think that's a powerful additional way, in addition to the important things Mike said about connecting to them one by one. Michael, were there others that emerged as questions that you were ready to ask?
There are lots, but I think we have a limited amount of time, but maybe briefly, several questions about safe return. I know we've discussed this a little bit, but Yvette Yolando says health and safety are primary concerns. We are seeing an increase in new COVID cases. How can we fight back? How can we be prepared if they ask us to come back in the spring? I think CLTs and HEOs are particularly concerned about that.
I don't know if Gilana is unmuted. If Gilana wants to say something, Gilana Reese, who is a powerhouse on health and safety issues, or maybe Jean Grassman. We saw a fight at the Hunter campus schools, and I'll say that one piece of it was self-education. There was massive self-education about what is needed, and that was a very powerful tool. So, and then there was organization. I mean, that was the second tool. So Gilana or Jean Grassman, would you like to say anything?
Specifically, in what?
How can, here's somebody else coming back to campus. How can they fight back and make sure they're safe? What would you say?
I agree with what you just said about educating yourself. I think Jean Grassman's also a great resource to go to help educate yourself. Yeah, so I think it's, and also persistence. So I would say that, like, you need to educate yourself, and you need to recognize that what you're fighting for is not like, $5 extra on your paycheck, but what you're fighting for is people's lives. This is a deadly global pandemic and has very serious consequences. So I think that just keeping that in mind kind of keeps your adrenaline going and keeps you fighting at times when things seem like they're not going to get accomplished. You just kind of have to keep pushing. So yeah.
Fantastic. Jean?
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I think this is really, I think it's a really important question, because what we're facing right now is we've had some members go back, and those members, we have seen how vulnerable those members are when they're going back to campuses that are not very, honestly, not very well prepared. I think what we are going to see is a tidal wave of people returning, and that is going to be, in other words, the problem we're sort of at the beginning of the problem of people returning. So I think one thing is, what Galana was saying, is to basically, it's organizing together to make sure, because we can't, the nice thing about working through the union on health and safety is that you're not just one squeaky wheel. You're basically, you have the power of the union behind you. And it can be very protective in terms of bringing up problems and getting them addressed. And so, so there's that, having the union behind you. The other is working with the watchdogs, and we meet on Thursdays from 3:30 to 4:30. So there's we have a lot of strategies that we use. It's more than we can go in now, but different points that we can put pressure on the administration, all the way from the top to the campus administrations. And sometimes we have found that just simply making the problems public causes shaming has been a great tool. So, and there's other things that we can do. So basically it's collective action. That's what it's all about.
I'll just add really quickly, just to document everything, get documentation, pictures, document, emails for everything is very helpful to have.
Yeah. And just to close that up, I mean, Yvette is from Hostos. This is an opportunity to organize professional staff at Hostos and have faculty support, which I'm sure you will. And the union, we've had experience on many campuses pushing back small groups, but we fear that in a place like Hostos, it will be larger groups. And I think it is a fairly large group who have been called back, and we've pushed back a little bit on that. But the key really is having a health and safety committee on campus, working with the faculty chapter and working with PSC Central to provide what you need. We did it daily with the Hunter College campus schools, whether it's a petition, whether it's letters, whether it's calls, whether it's a picket. Let's decide what the best things are to do, that your group will decide. The Hostos people will decide what's the best thing that we can do to defend our lives and our health up at Hostos.
Okay, great. I think we have to wrap it up because we're at 8:27. I mean, that is such an important question. And if anybody, Galana says modestly document, if anybody had seen the 40 or 50 texts I would get every day or so from Galana, it was the teachers who found that the filters CUNY had said, the HEPA filters they said they put in were not HEPA filters. It's the teachers who found what was wrong with their cohort system. It was the teachers who fought back, the whole faculty. There's a huge self-education and collective effort there and documentation. So great work there. So let's turn it over just to close us out. I mean, there's so much I know a lot of people want to say, but we'll turn it over to Andrea and Penny, and then we'll end for the night.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I hope everyone has signed up for the one-on-ones, but I am here to end by saying that with only 5 days to go until the election, I hope in the next 5 days, everyone in this meeting can spend as much time as possible working to ensure a victory for the Biden-Harris ticket and for Democrats in Senate races around the country. I've been to Philadelphia with Seed the Vote, who's working with the Working Families Party, and also Back to Blue, which is being run by the Democrats. And you can still sign up with either. They both have great canvassing operations that you can go to this weekend for anyone who can go in person. In fact, someone just texted me that if Trump doesn't win Pennsylvania, his chances of winning are like 2%. If you want to make calls, we have around-the-clock phone banking opportunities for you through the AFT. I'll put the links in the chat. The phone calls are great. You hit a lot of bad numbers, but when you talk to people, it's union members and you're sharing good information and creating momentum. And finally, regardless of where we are on November 10th, the PSC is holding an election debrief that evening at 6:30, which I hope someone could put information about that in the chat. So please sign up today to go to Pennsylvania to make calls, and of course, vote Trump out by voting for the Biden-Harris ticket on the Working Families Party.
Thanks, Penny. Am I unmuted? Yes. So I'm not going to take long, but I just wanted to say that this is, as you can see, I think you can see we tried our best to reach as many members as we can. Maybe it's one unintended consequence of COVID is that we can have thousands of members on the same call. And I think we have found that both on August 26th, when we had our 24-hour event, and tonight that we have a real opportunity to meet and talk with each other and listen to each other. And I hope you had a good evening hearing from other members and from leaders. But I think we will make every effort to have more town halls like this, possibly on more specific topics. There's so much to say. You had so many good questions, and we will have more opportunities. So I just want to thank everyone for being here.
So me too, and thank the speakers and the staff. I want to thank the PSC staff who did a huge amount of work. It's a lot. We had nearly 2,000 people on this call, 2,000 PSC members. That's pretty fantastic. And we need many, many more, but we had so many on here. And it, as Andrea said, it is a powerful opportunity, but it was a ton of work for the folks who put it together. And I really thank Naomi Zauder and our whole staff for that work. But most of all, I want to say, you know, I feel in members a hunger to take action. And I feel that members are ready to talk to each other about that. And others have said to us that they're so exhausted, they can't imagine taking another step. And what I started with, and I think want to end with, is that it's a way to relieve our exhaustion and sense of demobilization, which is deliberately created by things like a 20% withholding of budget, rather than actually cutting the budget in one blow and naming it as a cut. It's deliberately created by a CUNY administration that insists on saying, oh, we're not laying off adjuncts, we're just non-reappointing them. And aren't you glad we're not firing full-timers? It is deliberately created to demobilize us, to capitalize on our exhaustion and keep us from rising up and challenging the circumstances we're in. So I think none of us underestimate what we're up against, but also I think we should realize that exercising out, fighting and taking on that challenge by building the serious network of support that we would need in this city and in this state to engage in a strike, which, you know, as we know, is prohibited by the conditions in the Taylor law. That's different from UTLA in Los Angeles, different from Chicago teachers, different from some other places. We want to be prepared and do that well and in a way that is serious and respectful of our members and our students and their communities. So that's what we're preparing for. So join your chapter, sign up. Someone from your chapter chair or someone else will contact you and bring you into the group that's building that network. And when that is strong, and when we face the threats that we are anticipating and even the ones we're under right now, we will be able to activate that in a way that's serious and that actually builds power and does not undermine us. We need to build power through that and exercise our power. So I really want to say thank you all tonight and for the struggles and the support and the work we're doing together. It's incredible to see you. It was incredible to see teachers at Hunter campus ready to do what they did. Incredible to see how many struggles people are enduring and still working. So I ask you to find the energy and the relief and the joy that comes from being in struggle and join that and be part of your chapter's effort. And we will have the power to engage in the actions that I think many of us want to see. So thank you all. And if we could try unmuting all of us and maybe see if we could do a little round of applause for each other, not for the panelists, but for each other and what we've done together. So let's see if we can go out on a round of applause. Great. Thank you very much.
Barbara.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank
you. Thank you.
Yay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Everyone,
bye.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Paul. Thanks a lot for clapping.
Defeat Trump.
Yes.
Bye, Paul.
Barbara said bye, Paul.
Bye.
Bye.
night, everybody.
Beautiful. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.